How's it going out there, YouTube? My name is Jesse, and I am the curator for the Golden Age, and this is another...
Lost Heroes of the... Who are you? Your hair has changed.
Really?
I heard your kid saying it.
Yes, I know. I had to hear him saying it almost all day yesterday. Anyways, we are doing Lost Heroes of the Golden Age, and...
Never heard of Nemesis before.
I hadn't heard about this hero before either. I actually inquired if it was a villain at first. This is a request video.
We haven't done one of those in a while.
I know, it feels good to do requests because it lets me find doing requests lets me find new heroes like this that I didn't know about before. And I'm really glad that I was informed about this because I haven't really touched anything from ACG, and these were some pretty interesting stories. These were lengthy stories, but what was interesting is ACG started off in the Golden Age, and these stories took place in the Silver Age, but they almost had a Golden Age feel about them with the kind of dialogue in the movements. I mean, there are some things that was definitely of its time, but there were a lot of things that felt like I was reading a mixture of a Golden Age and a Silver Age comic at the same time, which was actually kind of interesting. Now, I go through a pretty good thorough intro of this hero. The best way to describe this is he is a supernatural hero, and not supernatural in the way of magic. We're talking about supernatural in the way of like ghost, specter. I don't think there was a lot of characters like this in the Silver Age. I mean, how he acted and fought villains, yes, but the premise of his powers, his base of operations, I don't think anything else. There's nothing else like this that I'm really too familiar with that went along this aspect, and it was actually pretty intriguing, so I'm glad that I got tuned on to this. So this is a very long review, so I don't want to extend this intro for too long. So let's go ahead and get into a hero that had some very interesting aspects about him. Let's get this started. Nemesis, Steve Flint, first appeared in Adventures into the Unknown, number 154. Now, he would go from 154 to 170. I believe that's 17 issues into Adventure into the Unknown. He almost ran it until the very end. Adventures Unknown would end at 174. He would also have two guest appearances where he would appear in Forbidden Worlds next to Magic Man, and then him and Magic Man would also appear in the Herbie comics where they would team up with Fat Fury. And I tried reading that. They were there. It was more of a joke thing, and I don't really review joke comics. It's never really been my thing. Okay, so this is kind of weird. Our hero fights crime basically as, well, it's not really crime. He fights what he needs to as a ghost. And he doesn't go after crime. He goes after people who have a reason to catch the attention of Nemesis in the realm of the unknown, which is kind of a way station between either going to heaven or hell based on your actions and deeds on the earth beforehand. And that would be the realm of the unknown and run by the current incarnation of the Grim Reaper. Now, there is the origin story is pretty well detailed. There's a 14-page origin story, which I have reviewed. It's long. And I'm not going to go into a lot here. These are just some things that I want to mention before we get into it. Some of the things that aren't in the first issue. Now, Nemesis has various powers. What they'll mention is he has a super strength. He can fly at supersonic speeds. He can go intangible. Or he's even been able to go invisible, which we don't see that until a little bit later. And his durability is an issue. There are times when he's actually stopped bullets, but he got knocked out and put in dangerous situations on more than one occasion. But then with some of the powers he displayed, it would make you wonder how. Now, some of the powers that you would see in later issues is he has been able to duplicate himself, where there would be more of him at the scene than would previously be there. Now, I don't think that the duplicates, I think it was more like an after image kind of duplicate. He also had a measure of ESP, and he can grow to a huge size. Now, one of the most perplexing things I found about him is that he could travel through time. On more than one occasion, he actually went into the past. And on one of those occasions that he went into the past, he actually fought Nazis. Because there was some sort of telescope in the unknown, which was the realm that he operated from. And it showed that the Nazis had taken over the entire world. So he had to go back into the past. He quantum leaped it. He went back in the past to put right what once went wrong. But he didn't go after criminals as a lot of other superheroes did. He would be going after... It would either be beings that possess a sense of supernatural power and would kill people that way, or beings that had, or people who had scientific abilities and killed people that way. So it was science and technology and mysticism that would normally get the attention to Nemesis. Street level criminals, thugs, those weren't really a cause for concern. Now, in the first issue, he takes on the Mafia, but that's because the Mafia is directly responsible for his death. But after that, he only really took interest in things that the Grim Reaper would take a look at, like people dying in mysterious ways, or people not quite sure how they died, or, like I said, in mystical ways. Now, on a number of occasions, he did have to fight animals. There were a couple of times when he went to another planet and helped them out. He mostly operated from the Earth, and he had fought animals on occasions. Now, one of the most peculiar things that kept popping up was the fact that he had a girlfriend. Yeah. Lita. At first, Lita is introduced as a ancestor that apparently had a relationship with the devil, and when he went to go see her, he fell in love with someone who was a great ancestor of the woman who the devil may have fallen for. Now, Nemesis, she wanted more of a relationship than Nemesis was able to give her, because Nemesis operated basically by the whim of the Grim Reaper. A lot of the times there were stories that were based in the era of the unknown, but he traveled to Earth in almost every issue. Now, the costume did not change too much. It was, what you see here is pretty much the static costume. Now, in the beginning issues, he wore the hood on his head, and the blue, which would on the nape of his neck, went over his shoulders at first, but as he would not wear the hood anymore, what would look like shoulder pads would later turn into what would seem to be a miniature cape. Now, Nemesis does not wear pants, and I don't know why. Because this was 1964. They were able to start. A lot of the heroes were wearing trunks on the outside of their pants in 1964. Just look at Marvel and DC. There's a plethora of characters that were wearing full outfits. I don't like the short shorts. This is 1964. We don't need the short shorts. Magic Man's not wearing short shorts. Anyways, this is just some of the stuff that I wanted to bring into view before you see the first issue, which is a pretty comprehensive origin story and a really good description of his powers. This is a longer review than I'd normally done, but each one of these stories were not small stories. They were all pretty big stories. They were pretty well detailed. They're actually really decent stories. And this is a publication, ACG, which I don't think I've gone into yet. Nemesis was definitely their first definitely the first thing that they did as a superhero. ACG had touched about every other type of genre out there: suspense, mystery, westerns. So this was the first time that they had done a superhero, and they actually did a pretty good job. Now, the one thing I did notice about Herbie is when they're introducing the heroes, Nemesis breaks through Nemesis and Magic Man, they both break through signs that they're hiding behind. And what I thought was really great is Nemesis bursts out of the Adventures into the Unknown poster, and Magic Man busts out of a Forbidden Worlds poster. That was actually kind of clever. Little bits of details like that. Now, a lot of times the continuity stayed pretty well, but there wasn't, it's like his relationship with him and his girl, but he didn't have any reoccurring villains, which he didn't need to. He had large comprehensive stories. Now, the mafiosa boss, he did deal with for the first 3 issues until his spirit was finally consumed by minions of Satan. And then everybody else only had their one appearances, like I said, through supernatural mysticisms or technology. So let's go ahead. I think I've covered just about everything that I need to before we get into the origin story, which should cover everything. Nemesis would appear on every cover until the last 3 issues. In the third of the last 3, he was still the featured story. The second to the last, he was the very last story. And in the very last story that he appeared on, he was almost the last story. I don't know if it was a popularity thing, but he did get pushed back to the back when they took him off the cover. Look out! He's on your trail, and nothing can save you. Beware of this phantom adventure striking out of the unknown with smashing power, blazing a trail of terror among evildoers. Beware of the mighty Spectre men called Nemesis. Spectre men? I think they worded that wrong. To say Spectre men would mean that there is a number of them. He's the only Nemesis. Okay, story by Shane Oshira and art by Pete Costanza, which that name actually sounds familiar. Okay, this is a nice little splash page of him tearing open the jet, and these are actually some of the characters that will be part of the story. This is Nemesis. The world grew to know him in many ways. People whispered of his unbelievable strength and his invulnerability to things feared by normal men, of his strange ability to fly at supersonic speeds, But there were other things, far more amazing powers that were supernatural, and those that knew him best, they were supernatural too. So we get a couple of pages of just him in his costume, which I know it's 1964 and we started having the birth of the superheroes, but that is a weird outfit. And you had the short shorts. I mean, I know that there was a plethora of that in the golden age, but this is 1964. We weren't doing superheroes with short shorts. I mean, look at what was coming out in Marvel and DC. We had people in full-length costumes. They may have worn the trunks on the outside of their pants, but they still wore pants. Okay, and we see that the person to become Nemesis is Steve Flint. And he is a famous detective, and he's being interviewed. Everyone knows your great record of success against criminals, Mr. Flint. It's as if your life is a constant manhunt. Why? Is it corny to say I hate crime? I can't stand seeing civilized humans being pushed around by bloodthirsty rats. So, after he gives his interview, he's summoned by the Department of Justice because they need him to help with all the sabotage that's going on. And heard of sabotage? That's what we've been up against down at National Missile. National Missile? You have a plant where you make munitions called National Missile? Accidents like these, and we see two of them. And he says that he believes that it is the work of the mafia. Now, I know that when you say mafia today, it has a different ring about it than it did back in the 60s. I mean, he even says, well, it's the 19th century secret society that started in Sicily and then spread all over the world. So powerful and revengeful that nobody dares betray it. And this actually, a little bit of what he says here is, I looked it up, and that is absolutely correct. A 19th century secret society that started in Sicily. I am actually very impressed that they included this real world bit of history into the comic book. That is exactly, when they started, where they came from, and the fact that they called themselves the Mafia. And I think that they were a far more to be feared back then. Okay. As he's talking to the government, let's see. I see when G-Man and T-Man and cops get you nowhere, you send out a call for Steve Flint, right? Okay, I know what G-Men are, but I'm not exactly sure what T-Men are. Now, I've done a lot of Golden Age, so that's why I'm familiar with G-Men, but I'm not familiar with T-Men. Okay, so, seems that let's see, this is a crazy idea. You've got every right to refuse help, and he's not going to refuse to help. He wants to help people. So we start going back and forth between Flint and, let's see, that night, Gorgita, Mafia Chief, I believe that I'm saying that right, Gorgita. Mafia Chief of the United States got the news. So he hears that Flint is going to be on the investigation. And then we go back to National Missile, where he says that he's going to start tracking down where the sabotage is coming from. But where do you find a suspect? There were ways. Bet a fella like you knows a lot of what's going on in this plant, right? Me, I don't know nothing. And if I did, I wouldn't talk about it. And then we see him pouring some elixir into the glass. Why should I tell you there's a sabotage job tonight? Question mark? Good, the serum got through to him. So we see that he stops some of the sabotage, and then we cut to these panels over here where it says, over the next few weeks. And Gorgita comes up and talks to Steve particularly, and he's trying to buy Steve off to, make him leave the National Missile Site and stop, so they can continue with their sabotage. it's not World War II. I'm not completely sure why they would be trying to stop National Missile. I mean, I don't know what was going on in the 60s quite as well as the Golden Age. And you can see how many Golden Age videos I've done. He says that he's like, I'm here on vacation. I don't want to get involved in any work. So he knows who Gorgita is. And he knows that they were attempting to bribe him. So Gorgita decides, it's like Gorgita took no chances. He arranged a pretend sabotage job, making sure that news of it would leak to Steve. So these guys start setting up a job so that Steve would come up there and confront him. And just as he does confront him, a train starts bearing down on him. Just as I planned it. Get started. Bear down fast. Now, I have a little problem with this. He's on the tracks, and then it looks like the train... Now, I might be reading it wrong, but it looks like the train gathered up speed really quickly to catch Steve off guard, which doesn't make any sense. If you've ever seen a train move, even if it's just the front train car itself, it doesn't move right away. It starts off slowly and then picks up speed and then becomes so fast that it you can't get out of the way of it. But that takes time to build the speed. And even if this train was far enough away to get the speed and started going into the track area, Steve could hear that the train is coming and wouldn't be on the tracks. So either this train was coming in and Steve was being incredibly stupid and stood on the tracks while the train was coming, or somehow they got a train to go really fast, really quick, so they could run him over. Warned by the oncoming roar, Steve turned too late. There is no way that he was careless enough that he sat on the tracks while a train was able to build up enough speed to run him over. So, as I am going to give the suspension of disbelief that he got ran over by the train, which would send him to the afterlife to continue this story, I don't buy what happened here. Now, if they had shown that this train was on a gigantic ramp and it launched it to go super fast, then yeah, I could accept that. But there's no indication of why this train went from like 0 to 100 in 0.5 seconds. The whole scene here does not add up. And I really hate to point this out, because after I just congratulated them on putting some real world history into this comic book, it was 1964, it might have actually been going on at the time, I applauded them for that because it was real. But this is so far real, it stretches the suspension of disbelief. It really does. The trains don't pick up this fast. They do move that fast once they pick up speed, but they don't move that fast that quickly. And if this thing was moving slowly, there's no way he's going to stand there and go, slowly run over me. The whole thing doesn't pan, but it needs to be part of the story. Okay, yes. Oh no, yes. And it had all, you really went from a word bubble to a text placing. Yes, it had all gone as Gorgita had planned, and now it's hard to realize I'm dead. That's not the gates of heaven, but it's really weird. I mean, this guy's a Grim Reaper type character, and he has a gate unknown. The whole thing here is real weird. And then this whole section is just unusual as heck. As a newly arrived spirit, you must stand trial and be sent to either heaven or Hades. But the calendar's crowded and there's a long wait for your trial. Why? Why is this a thing? But I can't wait here. I need to go back to Earth and fight organized crime. No, it's impossible. It's forbidden for spirits to return to Earth. But if you don't let me go back to Earth and finish the crime, and that's not fair. The unknown is supposed to be impartial. Yes, that's true. We may have to reconsider your case. And then Satan pops up. Don't you dare, Grim Reaper. That would be a sign that you are against me, and you know what I do to anybody who's against me. Don't worry, Satan. I won't grant his permission. It's already odd enough that this looks like a court system, but now Satan has popped up. If you give him permission, you're against me. That's such twisted logic. Okay, and then he leaves. Now he's gone. Send me back. Basically, he's gone. Now listen to me. Unless I can go back down, crime will continue worse than ever. You're a spirit, so you must have lived on Earth once, right? I sure did. Until I got up here, they gave me the job as the latest in the line of Grim Reapers. I don't think the Grim Reaper works that way. And if you can just take spirits off of Earth and make them Grim Reapers, shouldn't we have a whole bunch of Grim Reapers so there's not a backup in the court system? That's the afterlife. And why would the afterlife be so booked that you can't get him in immediately? None of this makes any sense. I like the horned hooves on Satan, though. That's a nice little touch. The hooven foots. It's a nice little touch. Back on Earth, I used to own a nice little night spot outside of Chicago. I was killed when it was bombed by a mob of racketeers led by a hood named Gorgita. Well, he's the very man I'm after. He's the local head of the mafia now. So, I mean, this couldn't have been for too very long. I mean, Gorgita may have been a low-level man and he's the leader now, but this would have had to have happened within the last 10 to 15 years. It's surprising that the Grim Reaper wouldn't have been a figure that has been long even farther than that, but he needs to have been wrong so that he would, capitulate. The Grim Reaper was so angry that he forgot all about Satan. How do you forget about Satan? Okay. Now, it makes sense. They both needed to be wronged by the same person so that the unknown would be influenced enough to send him back to Earth. He says that he's going to send them back as a revengeful spirit. And I don't understand how Steve knows all of this already. Think so? Remember that as a spirit, I'll have powers that no earthly mortal can own, and I'll get to use them against evil. I'll have the terrific strength, the ability to fly through the air and appear and disappear at will. I will be invulnerable to all things that would kill mortal men. How do you know that? You were a regular detective, not a spirit detective. How do you know that you would suddenly have these powers? That's as unusual as with Captain Triumph, where he all of a sudden knew what his powers were going to be and only being dead for 5 minutes. It won't be enough. The Mafia is a terror organization. Your only chance is to pay them back in the same coin. You'll need a costume, something symbolic of your mission that will strike fear into their hearts. That's not a costume that's going to strike fear. It's a costume that's going to make you laugh your ass off. I mean, look at it. It is ridiculous. I can name about 4 or 5 Marvel and DC characters that you took this outfit from and grafted it as your own. And the hood is so weird. And if you're going to be flying, you need at least to have a cape. Okay. So, we see him as intangible, and he goes to, let's see. There's Gorgita now talking to one of the National Missile Workers. Man must be the Mafia member. So, he sees the guy gawking to Gorgita, and he follows him home. And he walks through the wall. It's great. Fire bullets. Your bullets can't hurt me. It's too late for that. And then he becomes corporeal, and he starts to interrogate the man. The man is extremely frightened. He can barely talk to him. Afraid to tell you, but I can't help myself. Drumdum Forest. So he leaves and goes to the forest, and he sees that there's smoke. That fire will sweep through the forest, headed straight for the missile plant. Why is the missile plant in the middle of a forest area that a forest fire can threaten it? That seems like a horrible idea. Okay. So he sees the fire, say it's going to go towards the missile plant, and he notices the dam down there, so he crashes into the dam and breaks it open. Very reminiscent of what you see on the cover. The released water thundered down, extinguishing the woodland flames below. This way, the water's headed. It'll miss the plant. Thank gosh. Thank gosh! Thank gosh! I know the propensity of not wanting to cuss in a comic book, especially when you're trying to appeal for kids, but thank gosh? I don't even know what to make of that. Okay. We zoom in on the forest and we see that it's flooded, and Gorgita and another Nemesis, they're grabbing onto a tree to avoid the flood. Look, boss, there's a man flying. No, it's not a man. That thing is transparent. He looks like Steve Flint. Bull. First of all, he is transparent and he is wearing a mask, a full costume. There is no way that you look at him and say, that's Steve Flint. That is BS. My suspension of disbelief will not allow that. Gorgita could see through the mask of a transparent individual and automatically assume that he's Steve Flint. No. I know I'm ranting. I totally will not buy that. I mean, no. If he wasn't wearing the mask, maybe. But he's wearing a mask and he's transparent. You do not just look at him and go, hey, the outline of that guy seems familiar to somebody that I might know. So that automatically makes him him. No, I'm not going for that at all. Gorgita was determined and relentless. He knew how to deal with enemies. This time he visited Jonathan Jones, the most famous for all the ghost breakers. So he wants to know how to stop Nemesis, because obviously you assumed he was a ghost. I mean, transparent and flying, yeah, you can make that assumption. So he says that he wants help, and he's like, I'm not going to help you. So he threatens him, and he gives him the idea about the one thing about ghosts, and I've never heard this until this comic book. The one thing about ghosts is he has no reflection, and if he had one, he'd lose his power. There may be a way to help create a reflection, though, through light and terrific candle power, and if you can do it, you've got him licked. Spare me and I'll tell you the details. Now, I don't know about this. I know a fair bit about ghosts and the supernatural rules and the planes world and that. I don't know anything about this. This is totally new to me. This might just be created in the comic book so we can give our hero weakness, but if this is a thing, please let me know, because this is really something that is truthful. I've never heard of it before, and it's actually an intriguing aspect, but I've never heard of it. If it's true, I'd sure like to know. So if anybody who's watching this, please let me know if that's an actual thing. But it is an actual thing here, and he's setting up a plan so that he can get him on launching day. So there's a whole bunch of people who get into the spacecraft. This is a memorable day in American history, the day when the space shall be bridged, the moon brought within range, and the race with Russia won. Oh, hold on. Didn't we go to the moon in 1969? To the moon in 1969. Yeah. This is 5 years before we actually went to the moon. Okay, so we see Steve, Nemesis, standing guard. There she goes. Launch safely. Guess my job is done. And he's helped keep the sabotage at bay enough to get the ship launched. But Gogeta was going to let the launch happen anyways, because he was setting up a trap for Nemesis. So Nemesis flies over and he sees a guided missile has been set to the testing position and is carefully guarded. So he's going down there to try to break up the rocket. And as he goes in there and starts fighting the bad guys, they start to set up the trap at very quickly and beyond his notice. And Nemesis is new at this, so he might not have been fully aware of what was going on. Quick, before he can see what we're up to, move the mirrors. I thought he was shouting at first, but I see the text bubble with the bifurcations in there lets you know that he's actually whispering. Fighting like a tornado, he didn't notice the strange separations that were being made. All right, you men, out of the way. So they set up the mirrors and they start bombarding him with light rays. And let's see, the searchlight beams into him and he actually starts to lose his power as reflections start to take shape in the mirror. And now this is actually really keen. I like this. As he starts to fall down and grow weaker as he falls to the floor, the reflections actually gain strength. And it even says it here. But as Steve, it says, overpowered, he sank to his knees and the reflections started to gather. At first, they were weak, hardly more than a shadow. But as Steve grew weaker under the remorseless light, the reflections grew stronger. And now they seemed to have their own identity and mocked the weakened Nemesis. Where are your powers now? Where are all the strength gone? Haha, you can't save the rocket from the ground to air missile. We're going to send it. It'll blast it out of the sky. And he starts to gather enough strength so that he can bash into one of the mirrors. My own reflections rob me of my power. Can't get it back while they're still there. So weak. And he starts crashing into the reflections and starts breaking the glass. It was his weakness that made him pitch forward, helplessly colliding with several of the mirrors. So he stumbled into some of the mirrors and broke it. And as the reflection started to break, some of his strength started to come back. The shattered glass destroyed some of the awful reflections, and Nemesis felt some of the strength surging back enough to attack the remaining mirrors. Now, he destroys all the mirrors and gains his strength back and goes after Gogeta. Now, he grabs him and flings him towards the rocket, and this ends up killing him. Let's see. He sends it towards the rocket. It blasts off. I threw him and the blast caught him. That's too bad. But you lived by violence and in the end, it caught up to you, Gogeta. Now, he sees the rocket launch in the air and he's not sure that he can catch up to it. Great Scott, the missile, there it goes. Homing in on the rocket. It's gone. I can't prevent the deadly meeting unless maybe I can. Now, he starts to 3,000 miles an hour. Really? I don't know how fast a rocket goes, but it's awfully specific. Can't you just say I'm traveling at super speeds? All right. So he heads off the rocket or missile and stops it before it collides with the rocket. And as it bursts into flame, we see a paper. Americans make it to the moon, wins the space race against the Soviets 5 years earlier than what we did in real life. The nation rejoiced, but they didn't know the real story that lay beyond the headlines. Well, I guess I did what I had to. It was a great job, Nemesis, but you've just begun. You don't know the terrible dangers that will confront you. And then we see Gogeta walking towards Unknown's gate, just like Steve did. Yes, that includes the greatest danger of all. I'm dead, now a phantom. But that will give me the powers I didn't have back on Earth. Powers to use it for evil. You will only gain those powers if the Unknown gives it to you, like he did with Steve. Enough power to destroy the ghost that is responsible for my death. Nemesis, There's a giant duel shaping up, a meeting of two terrific phantoms. Watch this magazine for the next breathless installment of Nemesis. The end! Wow, this was a long review. Well, I hope you liked this video. Took a little bit of time to do this one properly, but I hope that I did this to where I answered just about all the questions that I would have had on this. I love filling out request videos like this because it's a hero that I never heard about, and it was someone brand new for me to look into, and I discovered somebody else that I would like to look into and maybe do a review of. So if you have requests, keep them coming in, because I love finding out about new heroes, even if it is the Silver Age. This is a Silver Age, Golden Age video. We've done some Silver Age things like that before. But I do like discovering new heroes. So until next time, I'll be seeing you.